she gonna have her pictures on the side?
I think, wait, Jason, do you have our pictures on the side, or is it just the presentation that you can see?
What do you
I'm
mean?
fine with it if they are.
I mean, all I'm recording is this Discord window with our icons talking. I'm not recording anything else.
The class is gonna have to deal with the profile pictures.
Oh yeah, that's right. Trash bag man.
Oh yeah, I took mine off just in case.
Yeah.
What was it?
We don't have to talk about it.
Hang on just a second. Before you see any more of the video, I should probably contextualize just a little bit for you. I mean, I don't know about you, but I'd like the video I'm watching to make just a little bit of sense. So if you didn't know, this group's book is called Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston, a novel released in 1937, and it's widely considered a classic work of the Harlem Renaissance. It follows the life of a woman named Janie Crawford and takes readers through her life, starting at around age 16. I mean, I should probably make a timeline for this. Here. Yeah, this will work. Throughout the course of the novel, readers are taken through Janie's 3 marriages, each more in-depth than the last. It also introduces several characters during this time, but though luckily for us, they aren't really relevant. Janie's first marriage happens early on, around age 18. She gets married to an older guy named Logan Killix, who she hates. This serves as her first challenge in the novel. One day, about a year later though, while Logan is out of town, she falls for a man named Joe Starks, who she runs off with and founds a town in Florida called Eatonville. Here, she works as a shopkeeper and mostly a trophy piece for Joe, which she also hates. One day in the store, though, a man named Tea-Cake comes in, and the two become close friends, and eventually, Janie falls for him. However, like all great love stories that we read in gifted English classes, it ends in tragedy. I'm not going to go into detail though because it's actually a pretty good book and I do recommend you read it. Anyways, you're probably not caught up at all, but I'm kind of pressed for time, so here's the rest of the video.
Wait, am I starting like right now?
Whenever you're ready.
Oh
Yeah,
my
whenever
god,
you're ready.
wait. Okay, wait. I just totally forgot how to present a project. Okay, so for my connection, I chose historical situation, and the event I chose was Republican motherhood. So Republican motherhood was a concept popular in the 1700s where women were expected to be compliant towards their male counterparts and serve as the educator for their kids. So although Janie and her husbands never had any children, she was forced into a submissive role as Republican motherhood did to the woman of that time. The influence that Republican motherhood had on Their Eyes Were Watching God were the relationship between Janie and her husbands. So after Joe Stark was unanimously voted to become mayor of Eatonville, one of the citizens suggested Janie should give a speech. However, before she could respond to the request, Joe announced, "Thank you for your compliments, but my wife doesn't know nothing about no speech making. I never married her for nothing like that. She's a woman and her place is in the home." So throughout Janie's life, she is told repeatedly that her purpose was to basically be in the house and keep up the house and stand behind her husband, and she was controlled by her husband as women in the 1700s were with the ideals of the Republican motherhood concept.
So the type of connection that I chose was the author experience, and the event I just put as Hurston's search for self, because honestly many of the plot points in the book are based off of real experiences of Hurston's. So the first one I identified was Janie's search for love and acceptance within her home and support through marriage. Hurston had also been married 3 times, as Janie had been in the book, and had a love much like Tea-Cake, and her experience in romance is directly referenced within the book. The second point was Janie's move to Eatonville with Joe Starks, and a quote to represent that is, "Joe didn't make many speeches, mostly he talked about plans for the town when he got there." And the town that Joe Starks creates is Eatonville, in which Kirsten lived for most of her young life and visited many times after. Lastly, the hurricane at the end of the book, and a quote for that is, "As far as the eye could reach, water and wind playing upon it in a fury." And the hurricane in the Glades is related to the Lake Okeechobee hurricane and reference from Kirsten's experience with a hurricane she experienced in the Bahamas. So it just makes the book that much deeper, as the fact that she took so many plot points of the book from her own life, and the experience of writing it was much deeper just because it was related to her deeply through her own life experiences.
The first backward connection is social issues, and the event is sexism and ageism in the 20s and 30s. The influence of this is World War I and women having supporting roles in jobs, because women were given the opportunity to have jobs during the First World War, but were not allowed, mostly, to keep these jobs as the male workers serving in the war came back for their jobs. This sparked more of a powerful sentiment towards women in the workplace. Because there were women in the workplace, they got quite successful, most of them at least, and some of them were older women. And this relates to the book because older women were unadvised to go for younger men. Even if the older women were successful, the young men were still seen as the head of the house. And the quote I have is, "She ain't even worth talking after. I say about these old women run or after young boys." So basically, older women aren't really respected that much as they should be, even though they are successful in what they do.
So, in Their Eyes Are Watching God, Jamie's third and final husband, Tea-Cake, has a slight gambling issue. It doesn't necessarily interfere with the marriage to the point where it falls apart, but he does have an instance where he takes $100 from her without her consent. He gambles it all away, but he promises he'll make it back. And he eventually does, but now with a little bit of a struggle. So, in Their Eyes Are Watching God, one of the instances where he gambled, he got, quote, cut twice in the back, repeatedly upset Jamie in the process. Although Jamie was upset, she never did leave Tea-Cake and would take care of him after he was injured. The fact of the matter is, this is considered an addiction because even though he experienced both physiological and mental damage and harm, he still continued doing this behavior repeatedly, which is a clear sign of addiction. There is a modern connection to this too. Since during COVID-19 has left a lot of people indoors and by themselves, a lot of people have turned to gambling. Online gambling in particular has seen huge surges in traffic from many gambling websites such as BetUS, Red Dot Casino, and Intertops Casino, and this leads to a lot more mental health issues. In fact, people are 2.5 times more likely to attempt suicide, and 53.5% have divorce. And if you look at the MRI scans in the bottom right corner, you'll see why gambling can be so addicting. Because many times when people win or almost win, they get the same dopamine rush they do if they do win. So what happens is people get addicted to this. It's not necessarily a high, but it feels like one because your brain releases certain chemicals that simulate one. So that's what drives compulsive gamblers to keep on gambling.
So, for the social issue that I made a connection with to modern times is the Freedom Georgia Initiative. Basically, in Their Eyes Were Watching God, Janie and Joe Starks helped build up Eatonville, which is a real city in Florida that's, at the time of the book, it was inhabited and run entirely by African Americans. So, Jody would spread the news going around from town to town telling people about Eatonville and drumming up citizens to move there. What actually happens in the book is Janie and Joe essentially built this town up from nothing. Because of this, like, the ethnic community prevented racial discrimination and gentrification because these people had their racial heritage in common. The modern connection I made to it, back in September 2020, a group of 19 Black families actually bought nearly 100 acres of land in Toonsboro, Georgia. The reason they did this was because of issues that were like ongoing and rampant at the time, like police brutality, systemic racism, and COVID-19 economic hardships. They felt that they could really provide for the Black community So they named themselves the Freedom Georgia Initiative. What they do is they act as an organization that actually aims to build a safe haven for Black Americans, and they named the town Freedom, Georgia. So on their actual website, their mission statement, it includes the fact that what they're aiming to do is restoration, recreation, and reformation, and just overall build a better community that can rely on each other and thrive, and rather than condemn Black culture, celebrate it.
The forward connection that I chose for Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston was domestic violence. The event, the Violence Against Women Act, which was passed in 1994, I feel like the influence was when Miss Turner slur was introduced to Tea Cake. Tea Cake begins to brainstorm. Tea Cake's brainstorm causes Tea Cake to become jealous, and his jealousy causes him to commit domestic violence against Janie. Before the week was over, he had whipped Janie Hurston, age 147. Modern connection: as the issue of domestic violence became more prevalent in the United States, the Violence Against Women Act of 1994 was signed by President Bill Clinton on September 13, 1994.
Okay, so for my portion of the project, I decided to talk about the current event. I thought it'd be easiest for me to talk about the thing on everybody's mind recently, that being the, global pandemic. As I was reading through the novel, a certain portion at the end really stuck out to me. Remember how I said I wasn't going to spoil the book earlier in the video? Yeah, I lied. At the climax of the action that actually does happen in the novel, Tea Cake is bitten by a rabid dog, which gives Tea Cake rabies and ultimately assists in killing him. Before he dies, though, there's a conversation between Janie and Dr. Simmons which reads, "Janie, I'm pretty sure that was a mad dog that bit your husband. Some shots right after it happened would have fixed him right up." This told me as a reader that the world Janie is a part of had been faced with a viral infection, very similarly in the way that our world today is facing a pandemic many times worse. Another connection that I made was between both the rapid spread and even more rapidly developed treatment. With the casual way the doctor diagnoses Tea Cake with such a serious disease, we can infer that this has become commonplace, much like today, where nobody will bat an eye at an average of like 3,000 new cases of COVID-19 in the United States alone.
I totally wasn't expecting that twist of Tea Cake dying.
Right?
I know.
Sarcastic.
No, I'm serious. I
Dramatic.
haven't finished the
No,
book.
I didn't think you would think that.
You haven't finished?
I haven't gotten around to it, but like I know the gist of it.
Joe
Yeah.
died.
No.
I was gonna use that!